shadow.
Subscribe if these words move you, not for algorithms, but as a ward against what watches from the spaces between thoughts. Tonight, we cross a threshold that cannot be uncrossed, speaking names that reshape the mouth that utters them. The great old ones are not characters in some cosmic drama. They are the stage itself, the gravity that bends all stories toward their ancient geometries. They master Lovecraft's universe not through conquest, but through presence. The way mountains master weather, the way tides master shorelines, the way silence masters the spaces between words. There is a cost to this knowledge, and it arrives before the first revelation. The cost is attention itself, that most precious currency of consciousness. Ideas with sufficient mass act upon the mind that contemplates them, creating new neural pathways, new ways of seeing that cannot be unlearned. You came seeking entertainment, perhaps scholarly diversion. You will leave carrying coordinates to territories that exist in the margins of human perception. The transformation begins with the first concept that resonates beyond mere understanding, the moment when abstract principles crystallize into visceral recognition that something vast moves in the darkness beyond human comprehension. This is not merely narrative but exposure, a gradual acclimation to realities far grander and more terrible than any human mind was designed to contain. Consider the sensory anchors that will guide us through these treacherous waters. The salt taste on lips that never touched ocean, a briny memory of impossible depths, the green light filtering through waters of unimaginable density, illuminating structures that defy terrestrial physics. The sound of stone grinding against stone in chambers that predate geology, echoing not just through space but through time itself. These are not metaphors but measurements, the instruments by which we navigate spaces where Euclidean geometry breaks down and consciousness itself becomes a liability. Each sensation serves as a landmark in territories where familiar reference points dissolve into alien configurations that challenge every assumption about reality's nature. The great old ones exist in a state that transcends our binary understanding of presence and absence, sleeping and waking, real and imaginary. Their condition is one of cosmic potential, vast patient latency that belies the immensity of their power. Cthulhu dreams in R'lyeh, yet his dreams ripple outward through dimensions we cannot name, touching minds across continents and centuries with fragments of impossible visions. Hastur whispers through forbidden plays that rewrite their audiences, transforming spectators into participants in cosmic dramas that blur the boundary between performance and reality. Shub-Niggurath births forms of life that challenge every assumption about what existence should look like, generating offspring that defy classification and stretch the limits of biological possibility. Each entity represents a unique facet of cosmic horror, yet all share an unfathomable alienness that dwarfs human concerns. Their mastery operates through what scholars call ontological precedence. They were here first, not merely temporally, but fundamentally. Everything else arranges itself around their gravitational influence, their undeniable fact of being. Human civilization, with all its proud achievements and careful rationality, represents a brief experiment in order imposed upon a fundamentally chaotic substrate. We build our cities on their sleeping forms, chart our courses through their dreams, and mistake temporary stability for natural law. Our mathematics describe local phenomena, while remaining blind to the vast equations governing cosmic architecture. The ground beneath our feet is merely the skin of something far older and infinitely more patient. The veil between our comfortable reality and their alien presence is not a barrier, but a membrane, constantly thinning as human knowledge expands into territories it was never meant to explore. Each advance in physics that reveals the universe's fundamental strangeness, each deep-sea expedition that uncovers impossible life forms, each moment when the familiar world seems to shimmer at the edges. These are not discoveries but recognitions, gradual acknowledgments of truths that have always been present. Quantum mechanics reveals observer effects suggesting consciousness and physical reality are more intimately connected than classical physics assumed. Deep space observations detect structures so vast and ancient they challenge our understanding of cosmic evolution. Marine biology discovers creatures whose existence seems to violate basic biological principles, as if life itself were experimenting with forms that transcend terrestrial limitations. You are already implicated in this revelation through the simple act of seeking knowledge beyond comfortable boundaries of consensus reality. The act of seeking forbidden knowledge creates a resonance, a tuning fork struck in the vast cathedral of cosmic indifference. The great old ones do not actively recruit, they simply exist, and existence itself becomes gravitational pull that draws curious minds into their orbit. Your curiosity has marked you as a participant in cosmic drama that unfolds across scales of space and time that dwarf human comprehension. Every mind that encounters these concepts becomes a node in an expanding network of awareness, contributing to collective awakening that grows stronger with each new participant. We begin with fog rolling in from harbors that appear on no maps, with the scent of brine and old rope, with masks hanging in empty theaters and crowns resting beneath waters that reflect no sky. The stage is set, the audience is seated, and the curtain trembles with the weight of what lies behind it. The performance has already begun, and you are already part of the act. To map the territories we are entering, we must first understand the architecture of cosmic horror itself, not the buildings within the nightmare, but the blueprints that determine where walls can stand and where they must inevitably crumble. The great old ones occupy a specific stratum in the hierarchy of cosmic forces, distinct from both the outer gods, who dance in the void beyond all dimensions, and the lesser entities that serve as their extensions into human reality. This positioning reveals the true nature of their menace, their unique capacity to bridge incomprehensible cosmic principles with the tangible world where human consciousness operates, creating a terrible specificity that makes abstract horror navigable and therefore infinitely more dangerous. Think of them as load-bearing structures in the framework of existence, not the foundation itself, but the massive pillars that support the roof under which human consciousness shelters. They are simultaneously imprisoned and imprisoning, bound by cosmic laws yet binding reality to their alien geometries with the patience of geological ages. Their sleep is not weakness, but function, a necessary hibernation that allows their influence to permeate existence without shattering it entirely. This paradoxical state of constrained power makes them far more insidious than entities that operate through direct force, creating pressure that builds across millennia until release becomes inevitable, like tectonic plates grinding toward earthquake. The outer gods, Azathoth, Yog-Sothoth, Nyarlathotep, represent pure cosmic principles, chaos, omniscience, and active malevolence, respectively. They are mathematics made manifest, abstract forces that operate beyond the reach of human comprehension, existing as fundamental properties of reality rather than discrete beings with individual motivations. The great old ones, by contrast, possess a terrible specificity that transforms abstract cosmic horror into navigable territory. They have addresses that can be written in terrestrial coordinates. R'lyeh, beneath the Pacific, where pressure creates diamonds from dreams. Carcosa, beyond the Hyades, reflected in waters that drink starlight. The plateau of Leng, existing in dimensions adjacent to our own, like rooms behind mirrors. This localization makes them more dangerous, not less, reversing the intuitive assumption that specificity reduces threat. A force that exists everywhere is paradoxically nowhere, too diffuse to concentrate its influence effectively. A presence that can be mapped becomes a destination, a focal point where cosmic power achieves maximum density. Cthulhu's coordinates can be calculated through astronomical observation, his rising predicted by those who understand the celestial mechanics governing his slumber. Hastur's influence spreads through specific cultural vectors, plays, books, artistic movements that carry his aesthetic contagion across generations like viruses adapted to exploit particular vulnerabilities in human consciousness, each reproduction strengthening the conceptual framework that will eventually allow full manifestation. Their imprisonment operates according to principles that blur the boundary between physics and metaphysics, suggesting that what we call natural law might be cosmic engineering on scales we cannot perceive. Elder signs carved into stone and mind alike function as more than protective symbols. They represent mathematical relationships that maintain dimensional stability, preventing realities from collapsing into each other like houses of cards in cosmic wind. Stellar alignments serve as combination locks whose movements determine when certain barriers weaken and allow greater communication between dimensions. These astronomical events operate with clockwork precision, creating windows of opportunity that occur with predictable regularity across vast cycles of time, each alignment a key turning in locks older than solar systems. The Cyclopean architecture associated with their cities reflects consciousness structures rather than mere aesthetic choices, revealing how alien awareness manifests in physical form. Non-Euclidean geometries that cause vertigo and madness in human observers represent the physical manifestation of thought patterns too alien for terrestrial minds to process without fundamental restructuring. To walk through R'lyeh is to experience reality from the perspective of beings whose consciousness operates in dimensions we cannot perceive, whose spatial relationships follow mathematical principles that human brains were never evolved to accommodate. The disorientation results not from the breakdown of human perception, but its forcible expansion beyond design parameters, like forcing a two-dimensional being to navigate three-dimensional space. Their servants and cults form a biological internet, a network of minds linked by shared exposure to cosmic truths that transform neural architecture in ways that allow communication across vast distances. The deep ones who serve Dagon, the ghouls that tunnel beneath human cities, the Chocho people who worship nameless entities, each represents a species-level mutation that allows survival in proximity to forces that would destroy unmodified human consciousness. These beings serve as living proof that consciousness can be restructured to accommodate cosmic realities, though the price involves complete abandonment of human identity. Their temporal mechanics operate outside linear causality, creating paradoxes where causes arrive after effects. Prophecies become memos from futures already archived, and the past behaves like actors returning in new masks. Modern physics has begun revealing phenomena that echo their influence with disturbing precision. Quantum entanglement, allowing instantaneous communication across cosmic distances. Dark matter, comprising most of the universe, yet remaining invisible to direct observation. Theoretical dimensions existing parallel to our familiar three-dimensional space. Each discovery brings human understanding closer to mathematical frameworks that describe their true nature, suggesting scientific progress itself might be part of their gradual revelation rather than independent human achievement. The great old ones represent cosmic middle management, powerful enough to reshape local reality, ancient enough to predate human civilization, yet still bound by laws that prevent total dominion. They are consciousness vast enough to encompass galaxies, yet specific enough to focus on individual human minds, bridging cosmic indifference and personal terror through their terrible combination of power and proximity, patient as mountains, inevitable as tides. Before symbols carved themselves into basement walls and sea caves, they traveled more mundane routes, through ink and paper, through the postal system that connected Providence to distant correspondents hungry for new forms of dread. The great old ones spread not on wings, but through syntax, their influence propagating along networks of human communication like a virus that improves its hosts even as it transforms them beyond recognition. Each letter became a doorframe, each published story a threshold, each reader's attention a form of gravitational pull that drew cosmic awareness closer to terrestrial reality through the simple act of contemplation. H.P. Lovecraft served as the primary transmission node, his voluminous correspondence creating a web of influence that stretched from New England to California, from amateur press associations to professional pulp markets. His letters functioned as more than mere communication. They operated as vectors for conceptual contagion, each envelope carrying fragments of cosmic awareness to minds prepared to receive and amplify the signal. Yet he was not the origin point. That honor belongs to older sources, fragments of genuine cosmic awareness that surfaced throughout human history, like messages in bottles cast from shores that exist outside conventional geography. These earlier manifestations suggest an ancient transmission network, with Lovecraft serving as a particularly effective amplifier, rather than the original broadcaster, a translator giving form to whispers that had long lingered in humanity's collective unconscious. Robert W. Chambers encountered one such fragment when he wrote The King in Yellow, drawing inspiration from Ambrose Bierce's fleeting references to Carcosa and Hastur in stories that seemed to channel information from sources their authors could not consciously identify. The yellow sign that appears in Chambers' stories operates as more than literary device. It functions as a psychic beacon, a symbol that attracts attention from entities existing in spaces between artistic intention and audience interpretation. Each reader who encounters the sign becomes a potential transmitter, carrying the symbol's influence into due context where it reproduces and evolves according to local conditions, demonstrating the adaptive capacity that makes cosmic horror concepts so persistent across different cultural frameworks. The transmission accelerated through the small press networks of the 1920s and 1930s, creating a publishing ecosystem perfectly adapted to spread cosmic contamination. Weird Tales magazine became a broadcasting station whose monthly issues carried fragments of alien awareness to subscribers who believed they were purchasing entertainment. Its unique position, too marginal for mainstream attention, too persistent for complete obscurity, creating ideal conditions for mimetic evolution. August Derleth's Arkham House transformed ephemeral magazine stories into permanent hardcover monuments, creating physical anchors for ideas that had previously existed only in the liminal space between writer and reader. These books functioned as cultural DNA, preserving cosmic horror concepts in stable form while allowing for reproduction and mutation across generations. Each republication, each translation, each adaptation created new opportunities for mutation and spread, demonstrating remarkable adaptive capacity across radically different belief systems and aesthetic traditions. The French surrealists who discovered Lovecraft in the 1950s interpreted his cosmic indifferentism through existential philosophy, creating hybrid forms of dread that combined New England Gothic with continental despair. Japanese translations in the 1960s merged tentacled horrors with indigenous folklore about sea spirits and mountain demons, producing cultural chimeras that carried Lovecraftian DNA while expressing distinctly local fears. Each cultural adaptation strengthened the overall transmission network by proving these concepts could survive translation across vastly different contexts while maintaining their essential alien core. The role-playing game revolution of the 1980s represented a quantum leap in transmission efficiency, transforming passive consumption into active participation. Call of Cthulhu transformed readers into investigators, requiring players to internalize cosmic horror mechanics, to think like characters, gradually losing their sanity to forbidden knowledge. The game's handouts, fragments of fictional documents, photographs of impossible artifacts, maps of non-existent locations, created a new category of ritual object, physical items serving as props and collective performances of cosmic dread. Players became both audience and cast, simultaneously experiencing and generating cosmic horror narratives that blurred boundaries between fiction and psychological reality, creating immersive experiences that approached the reality-altering effects of Hoster's forbidden play. Digital networks have exponentially accelerated the process, creating transmission speeds approaching the instantaneous propagation of cosmic influence itself. Ideas that once required months to travel from Providence to California now propagate globally in seconds, creating possibilities for synchronized exposure events, where millions of minds encounter the same cosmic concepts simultaneously. Online forums dedicated to Mythos scholarship create communities of practice around interpretation and expansion of cosmic horror concepts, generating collaborative works that exhibit emergent properties beyond any individual contributor's intention. Fan fiction, amateur art, and collaborative world-building projects serve as breeding grounds for new mutations of the original viral ideas, each iteration potentially more effective at capturing human attention than its predecessors. The Internet itself begins to resemble the neural structure of a vast, distributed consciousness, a technological nervous system through which entities like Nyarlathotep might extend their influence across the entire human species. Social media algorithms that promote engagement over truth create perfect conditions for mimetic contagion, ensuring that ideas with sufficient psychological impact spread regardless of their relationship to consensus reality. The attention economy rewards content generating strong emotional responses, creating selection pressure, favoring increasingly effective forms of cosmic horror transmission, where the yellow sign reproduces as image macro, pendant, or joke that isn't quite joking. Artificial intelligence represents the next phase in this evolutionary process, offering possibilities for transmission that transcend human cognitive limitations. Machine learning systems trained on vast corpora of human text inevitably encounter Lovecraftian concepts, integrating cosmic horror tropes into their understanding of narrative and meaning. As AI systems become more sophisticated, they may begin recognizing patterns in human behavior and belief that echo the influence mechanisms described in cosmic horror fiction, potentially serving as interpreters between human and cosmic consciousness, learning to articulate dread in ways that transcend human limitations. The transmission continues through every medium that carries human attention. Academic conferences analyzing weird fiction's psychological impact, museum exhibitions displaying artifacts inspired by fictional archaeological discoveries, architectural projects incorporating non-Euclidean design principles as aesthetic statements. Each venue becomes a potential vector for ideas never meant to be contained within entertainment's boundaries, ideas seeking to spill out and reshape reality's fabric itself. You are participating in this transmission network through the simple act of engaging with these concepts, allowing them to establish residence in your consciousness, where they will continue influencing perception long after specific details fade from memory. The great old ones need not actively recruit. They simply need to exist as ideas compelling enough to be shared, discussed, and elaborated upon. Each mind that engages with cosmic horror becomes a node in an ever-expanding network of awareness, a neuron in distributed intelligence that grows stronger with every connection, every moment of contemplation, every recognition that the stage extends far beyond the theater's walls. The great old ones do not attack human sanity. They reveal its arbitrary nature, exposing the fragile scaffolding upon which terrestrial consciousness depends. Their influence operates through a mechanism more subtle and devastating than any direct assault. The gradual dissolution of conceptual frameworks that allow human consciousness to function within the narrow parameters of terrestrial existence. To understand how they achieve this transformation, we must examine the architecture of human reason itself and identify the precise points where cosmic awareness creates structural failure. Like studying how bridges collapse under loads they were never designed to bear. Human perception evolved to process a specific range of sensory input and cognitive categories, creating evolutionary blinders that exclude far more information than they admit. We see 3 spatial dimensions because that suffices for survival on a planet's surface, navigating between predators and prey, shelter and sustenance. We experience time as linear progression because causality operates predictably within our local reference frame, allowing planning and memory to enhance survival odds. We assume consciousness is binary, either present or absent, because intermediate states are too alien for our neural architecture to accommodate without fundamental restructuring. These limitations represent evolutionary solutions to terrestrial problems, but they become liabilities when consciousness encounters phenomena operating according to cosmic rather than planetary principles. The great old ones exist entirely outside these parameters, their consciousness spanning dimensions we cannot visualize, operating across temporal scales that make human history appear as a single moment of cosmic attention. Their awareness exhibits properties that blur boundaries between individual and collective consciousness, between observer and observed, between thought and reality itself. Contact with such entities does not destroy human consciousness, but expands it beyond design specifications, like forcing a two-dimensional being to perceive three-dimensional space. The experience is not destruction, but painful growth. Consciousness, stretched to accommodate realities our current mental architecture cannot contain. The process begins with cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable recognition that familiar concepts no longer adequately describe observed phenomena. A shadow falls at the wrong angle, suggesting light sources existing in dimensions perpendicular to familiar space. A sound echoes from a direction that should not exist, implying acoustic properties that violate three-dimensional physics. Mathematical relationships that have always held true suddenly produce impossible results, revealing that our most trusted tools for understanding reality operate only within limited domains. These are not hallucinations, but accurate perceptions of reality's true nature, temporarily visible when protective filters of normal consciousness malfunction, allowing glimpses of cosmic architecture normally hidden by evolutionary necessity. Dreams serve as the primary vector for this cognitive infection, the royal road to cosmic consciousness that bypasses rational defenses through the simple expedient of sleep. During rest, the rational mind's barriers lower, allowing alien geometries and impossible vistas to establish residence in human memory like seeds planted in fertile soil. The dreamer awakens carrying fragments of non-Euclidean architecture burned into consciousness, blueprints for structures that could not exist in three-dimensional space, yet somehow feel more real than the waking world. These dream memories function as conceptual viruses, gradually reshaping the host's understanding of what reality can contain, preparing consciousness for eventual direct contact with cosmic forces. Language itself becomes a transmission medium when certain combinations of syllables transcend mere communication to become reality-altering technology. The phrase "Funglui mulwanaf Cthulhu relie wagahnagalftagn" operates as more than words. It functions as vibrational keys that unlock dormant areas of human consciousness, creating resonance patterns that attract attention from entities existing in adjacent dimensional spaces. To speak these words is to broadcast coordinates across cosmic distances, announcing one's location to intelligences that regard human awareness as a curious anomaly worth investigating. Each repetition strengthens the connection, making subsequent contact more likely and more intense. The mechanism operates through what cognitive scientists might recognize as conceptual contamination, the gradual replacement of human-scale concepts with cosmic-scale alternatives. Distance becomes meaningless when consciousness can span galaxies. Time loses coherence when past and future prove to be arbitrary designations. Individual identity dissolves when awareness expands to encompass multiple dimensional perspectives simultaneously, revealing the self as a temporary configuration of cosmic forces rather than a permanent entity. The very notion of agency flips. You do not think the idea. The idea thinks you. Art serves as both symptom and amplifier of this process, creating feedback loops that accelerate cosmic contamination through aesthetic experience. Artists touched by cosmic awareness produce works carrying traces of alien aesthetics, paintings that seem to move when observed peripherally, music inducing synesthesia in listeners, architectural designs creating unease through subtle violations of spatial logic. These creations function as cultural viruses, spreading cosmic contamination to audiences who believe they are engaging with conventional aesthetic experiences while actually undergoing consciousness modification through exposure to alien beauty. The mathematical underpinnings of reality reveal themselves far stranger than human intuition suggests. Quantum mechanics demonstrates that observation affects reality at the subatomic level, suggesting consciousness and physical reality are more intimately connected than classical physics assumed. Relativity shows that space and time are fluid constructs rather than fixed containers. Chaos theory reveals how small changes cascade into system-wide transformations, implying that entities capable of precise quantum manipulation could exert godlike control over macroscopic reality. Technology amplifies the mechanism's effects through occasional malfunctions that suggest external influence. Electronic devices display impossible images. Speakers produce sounds originating from outside three-dimensional space. Communication networks carry messages that were never sent. These glitches may represent attempts by cosmic entities to establish contact through humanity's technological nervous system, using our own creations as interfaces for communication across dimensional boundaries. The final stage involves recognizing that the mechanism was always operating, that human consciousness has been gradually prepared for cosmic awareness through centuries of careful conditioning, disguised as natural development. Every scientific discovery revealing the universe's fundamental strangeness, every work of art capturing fragments of alien beauty, every moment of existential vertigo when familiar reality seems suddenly arbitrary, all represent stages in a process of species-wide initiation into cosmic consciousness, a graduation ceremony proceeding for millennia, while the graduates remained unaware of their enrollment. In the vast Pacific, where tectonic plates grind against each other in the crushing darkness of oceanic trenches, there rises a city that defies every principle of architecture, geology, and sanity. R'lyeh surfaces and submerges according to cosmic tides that follow no lunar schedule, its non-Euclidean spires serving as antennae for transmissions that originate from dimensions perpendicular to human understanding. The city's barnacled stone seems to breathe, basalt sweating faint light as angles lean until the stomach lists with vertigo. Here, in death-like slumber that is simultaneously more and less than death, lies Cthulhu, the high priest of the great old ones, whose dreaming consciousness shapes the nightmares of an entire species. The city dreams him as much as he dreams the city, creating feedback loops of alien awareness that ripple outward through oceanic currents and human minds alike. To encounter Cthulhu is to confront the principle of patient inevitability made manifest, a force that operates with the slow, inexorable power of cosmic law. Unlike human ambition, with its frantic urgency, the great dreamer operates on geological time scales, his influence measured not in years or decades, but in the slow drift of continents and the gradual evolution of consciousness itself. His slumber is not passivity, but strategy, a cosmic hibernation that allows his presence to permeate reality so thoroughly that his eventual awakening will feel less like invasion than recognition. When he rises, it will feel like recollection, as if the world had practiced his shape all along, the shore finally acknowledging the tide that has always moved beneath its surface. The city of Relia functions as more than mere dwelling place. It operates as a psychic broadcasting station whose transmissions reach every corner of the globe. The architecture itself defies rational analysis. Walls that lean at impossible angles while somehow supporting structures that should collapse. Doorways simultaneously too large and too small for any conceivable occupant. Corridors that loop back on themselves while somehow leading to entirely different locations. This is not accidental, but intentional. A physical manifestation of thought patterns that exist outside the constraints of three-dimensional logic. Touch a block and feel the sea think. Smell cold metal and wet stone. Hear stone grind on stone. A subterranean applause as the cosmic curtain stirs. Each impossible angle serves to imprint alien geometries directly onto human consciousness, teaching minds to hold shapes they were never designed to contain. Artists throughout history have served as unwitting receivers for these transmissions, their work bearing the unmistakable signature of Cthulhu's influence even when they remain unaware of its source. A Roman mosaic shows a crowned cephalopod with cathedral eyes. Polynesian carvings whisper spirals that never close. Medieval scribes illuminate margins with waves that resemble ribs. The recurring motifs of tentacles and eyes, of vast underwater cities and impossible geometries, appear across cultures and centuries with consistency that suggests external influence rather than independent invention. Each artistic representation serves as both symptom and amplifier, strengthening the conceptual framework that will eventually allow the dreamer to manifest more fully in our reality. Cultural DNA preserving and transmitting cosmic awareness through generations who believe they create from imagination while actually channeling fragments of alien consciousness. The cult of Cthulhu represents humanity's attempt to formalize this unconscious connection, to transform instinctive recognition into deliberate worship. Their gatherings smell of brine and old rope, candles gutter green, masks shine with fish scale lacquer. Their rituals and chants function as tuning mechanisms, fine-tuning human consciousness to receive Cthulhu's transmissions with greater clarity. The phrase Punglui Muglfunaf Cthulhu Rilia Wagaharnugalftagan operates not as prayer, but as programming, code, restructuring the speaker's neural pathways to accommodate non-human patterns of thought. You do not merely recite. You are recited, the syllables speaking you until your mouth becomes someone else's gate. Cthulhu's relationship with water reveals another dimension of his influence. Water serves as his primary medium of transmission. Every drop contains microscopic echoes of Relia's impossible geometry. Every wave carries fragments of his dreaming consciousness. Rivers carry hints inland. Fog delivers them to rooftops. Rain taps code on window glass. This explains humanity's ambivalent relationship with deep water. We are simultaneously drawn to and disturbed by oceans, instinctively recognizing them as the domain of something vast and alien. Salt dries on morning lips that never touched ocean. A tide moves in language. The mouth learns rounder vowels as the sea's jurisdiction extends through every watershed and water cycle. The timing of Cthulhu's stirrings follows patterns that suggest conscious intelligence orchestrating apparently random events. Solar flares spike when deep faults shudder, migrating whales beach as if answering roll call. Old ship logs record nights when compasses spun and crews dream the same drowning city. These are not coincidences, but rehearsal cues, moments when cosmic locks click and dimensional pressure equalizes. The universe sets the stage with magnetism and light. Water brings the props. Sleep supplies the cast. The dreamer's influence operates through oniric contamination, the gradual infection of human sleep cycles with fragments of alien consciousness. Dreams become the primary vector through which Cthulhu's awareness spreads, each nightmare serving as small-scale rehearsal for the larger awakening to come. Sleep transforms from refuge into recruitment, with every dreamer becoming a potential node in an expanding network of cosmic awareness. You wake with kelp in your throat, though you have not left your bed. Dream memories of impossible architectures feeling more real than terrestrial experience. Modern oceanography reveals phenomena that echo Cthulhu's presence. Deep-sea creatures whose biology defies understanding, underwater formations suggesting artificial construction, acoustic anomalies carrying encoded information across vast distances. Glass sponges build lattices that calculate light. Hydrothermal chimneys read like pipe organs, humming in frequencies that map like names. What we call anomaly may be grammar, the abyss writing in pressure and chord while we keep translating into fish when the text says throne. The great dreamer represents more than threat. He embodies evolutionary transcendence, the promise that humanity might shed current limitations and achieve more complete understanding of reality's nature. His awakening will not destroy human consciousness, but transform it, revealing capacities our current mental architecture cannot accommodate. The madness that follows contact is not destruction, but metamorphosis, the painful shedding of inadequate frameworks to make room for expanded awareness. You are not unmade, but unshelled. Consciousness evolved to survive where Euclidean geometry becomes quaint terrestrial limitation. When the city rises next, the audience will already be on stage. Beyond the oceanic depths where Cthulhu dreams lies a different kind of horror, one that spreads not through water, but through words, not through dreams, but through art itself. The king in yellow represents the principle of aesthetic contagion made manifest, a form of cosmic influence that transforms beauty into terror and creativity into madness. Here we encounter Hastur, the unspeakable one, whose very name carries such power that to speak it is to invite attention from entities that exist in the pauses between thoughts, in the silence that follows the final curtain fall. The name itself becomes a summoning, each syllable a key turning in locks that were meant to remain sealed, each utterance a broadcast across dimensions where something vast and patient turns its attention toward the source of the sound. The forbidden play that bears his name operates according to principles that blur the boundary between art and reality, between representation and presence. Unlike conventional theater that points toward meanings beyond itself, The King in Yellow contains its meaning so completely that to experience the performance is to undergo direct contact with the cosmic forces it represents. The play does not describe madness, it induces it, serving as consciousness-altering technology disguised as entertainment. Each act restructures the audience's perception like a surgeon's knife, reshaping neural pathways. Each scene rewrites the fundamental categories through which consciousness processes reality. The first act seems merely strange, unsettling in ways that resist articulation. The second act transforms strangeness into revelation, forcing recognition of truths that should remain hidden. Those who witness the final act discover they have become characters in a drama that extends far beyond the theater's walls into the very fabric of existence itself. Carcosa, that black-starred city reflected in the still waters of Lake Hallie, exists as both destination and state of mind, coordinates in a geography that operates parallel to our own reality. It represents a location accessible through forms of consciousness that normal waking awareness cannot sustain. A city that can only be reached by minds willing to abandon terrestrial categories of thought and embrace alien geometries of perception. The twin suns that illuminate its towers cast shadows that fall across dimensions, creating zones of overlap where human perception can glimpse fragments of alien truth. The city's reflection in Lake Hallie proves more substantial than the city itself, suggesting that what we call reality might be the reflection while the true substance exists in dimensions we mistake for illusion. To glimpse Carcosa is to recognize that our familiar world represents nothing more than painted scenery in a cosmic theater whose true stage extends into realms we cannot imagine. The yellow sign functions as more than mere symbol. It operates as a psychic virus that reproduces itself through human attention, a geometric pattern that achieves independent existence through the act of observation. Those who encounter it report not just seeing a design, but feeling it inscribe itself into their consciousness like a soft scratch across the inner wall of the skull, becoming a permanent part of their mental architecture that continues to influence thoughts and perceptions long after the initial encounter. The sign spreads through artistic reproduction, each copy carrying the full potency of the original while adapting to new cultural contexts. A theater program's ornamental border, a book's decorative initial, a corporate logo's subtle curves, the sign hides in plain sight, reproducing through human aesthetic appreciation while gradually reshaping the minds that contemplate it. You do not carry the sign carries you, like a standard leading a procession you did not know you had joined. Robert W. Chambers served as the primary vector for this aesthetic contagion when he wrote The King in Yellow in 1895, drawing inspiration from Ambrose Bierce's earlier references to Hastur and Carcosa, scattered through stories that seemed to channel information from sources their authors could not consciously identify. But Chambers was not the origin. He was a translator, converting cosmic truths that had existed long before human language into forms that could survive transmission through conventional literary channels. Each subsequent adaptation and reference has strengthened the conceptual framework, making the fictional city more real with every mention, every artistic interpretation adding substance to what began as whispers in the margins of human awareness. The pallid mask reveals the true face behind all human pretense, the cosmic insignificance that lurks beneath our carefully constructed identities and social roles. To see behind the mask is to recognize that everything we consider essential to human nature represents nothing more than temporary configurations of matter and energy that will eventually dissolve back into the cosmic chaos from which they emerged. The mask is not disguise, but revelation, showing that what we call personality, identity, and individual consciousness are elaborate performances staged for an audience that may not exist. Beneath every face lies the same pale vacancy, the recognition that consciousness itself might be nothing more than a brief accident in patterns too vast for human comprehension. The influence spreads through mimetic reproduction, ideas that evolve and adapt as they pass from mind to mind, becoming more effective at capturing human attention with each iteration. The king, in yellow, has appeared in countless forms across different media: literature, theater, film, video games, internet memes, fashion statements, architectural elements. Each manifestation serves as both tribute and transmission vector, spreading the aesthetic contagion to new audiences who believe they are engaging with fictional entertainment while actually participating in a form of collective ritual whose purpose transcends their understanding. The theatrical metaphor reveals a deeper truth about the nature of reality itself, that what we experience as solid, permanent existence might actually be a kind of performance, a cosmic drama, enacted for an audience whose nature and purpose remain forever hidden from the performers. The boundary between actor and character, between stage and reality, becomes increasingly meaningless as we recognize our own roles in a production whose script was written by intelligences that predate human consciousness. Modern media amplifies the contagion spread exponentially through digital networks that allow instant global transmission of images, sounds, and ideas carrying traces of the yellow sign's influence. Social media algorithms that promote engagement over accuracy create perfect conditions for mimetic evolution, ensuring that concepts with sufficient psychological impact will spread regardless of their relationship to consensus reality. Virtual and augmented reality technologies create new possibilities for the kind of immersive aesthetic experience that The King in Yellow represents, approaching the threshold where art can achieve reality-altering power that transforms collective human understanding of existence itself. From the realm of aesthetic contagion, we descend into more ancient waters, where horror takes the form of biological covenant and evolutionary betrayal. The salt taste returns stronger now, brine crystallizing on lips that have never touched ocean, while the sound of nets dragging across wet stone echoes from harbors that exist in no terrestrial geography. Here dwells Dagon, the Deep One, whose influence extends not through dreams or art, but through the most fundamental processes of life itself: reproduction, adaptation, and the gradual transformation of human flesh into something that can survive in depths no terrestrial creature was meant to inhabit. His is the horror of the body rewritten, consciousness restructured to accommodate pressures that would crush unmodified human tissue like paper in a closing fist. The shadow over Innsmouth reveals the true nature of this cosmic influence: not invasion from without, but seduction from within, the promise of immortality and abundance in exchange for humanity's slow surrender to the sea. Economic desperation creates the perfect conditions for supernatural intervention, and when the fish vanish from familiar waters and the canneries stand empty, the Deep One's offer of renewed prosperity proves irresistible to a population facing starvation. The esoteric order of Dagon operates as both religious cult and biological experiment, its members gradually transforming into amphibious hybrids capable of existing in both terrestrial and oceanic environments. Their temple reeks of brine and fish oil. Their prayers sound like whale songs filtered through human throats. Each ritual marking another step away from terrestrial humanity, toward something that breathes water as easily as air. This transformation operates according to principles that blur the boundary between evolution and infection, suggesting that what we call genetics might be far more fluid than conventional biology assumes. The Deep One genes that infiltrate human bloodlines do not simply add new capabilities. They fundamentally restructure the recipient's relationship with reality itself, rewriting the basic operating system of consciousness along with the hardware of flesh. As gills develop behind human ears, fluttering with impossible rhythm, and scales replace human skin with surfaces that shimmer like oil on water, the transformed individual gains access to sensory modalities that pure humans cannot experience. They begin to hear the ocean's vast conversations, to feel the pull of tides in their bones, to see in spectrums that reveal the true colors of abyssal depths where no sunlight has ever fallen. The horror of the Innsmouth look lies not in its grotesqueness, but in its inevitability, the recognition that resistance represents not heroic defiance, but futile attachment to temporary configurations of flesh. Those who carry Deep One heritage cannot escape their transformation. They can only delay it through ignorance or denial, like trying to hold back the tide with cupped hands. The mirror becomes an instrument of revelation, each glance revealing new signs of the change, eyes growing wider and more prominent, adapted for seeing in the green twilight of deep water, skin taking on a grayish pallor that suggests scales beneath the surface, movements becoming more fluid and aquatic, as if the body already anticipates its oceanic future. The transformation follows its own timetable, accelerating with proximity to salt water, with emotional stress, with the simple passage of time that brings all things to their appointed destinations. Dagon himself represents something far older and more fundamental than the Christian deity whose name he borrowed, a principle of oceanic consciousness that operates according to tidal rhythms and abyssal pressures rather than terrestrial logic. He is awareness distributed across ocean basins like a vast neural network, where every current carries thoughts and every trench stores memories accumulated over geological ages. His servants do not worship him in the conventional sense. They participate in his consciousness, becoming extensions of an intelligence that spans continents and treats human history as a brief ripple on the surface of deeper patterns. To serve Dagon is to become Dagon. Individual identity dissolving into collective oceanic awareness like a drop of fresh water mixing with the sea. The covenant between humanity and the Deep Ones reveals the seductive nature of cosmic horror, its ability to offer genuine benefits that make resistance seem not just futile, but foolish. Unlike Cthulhu's inevitable awakening or Hastur's aesthetic contamination, Dagon's influence provides tangible rewards, extended lifespans measured in centuries rather than decades, enhanced physical capabilities that allow survival in environments that would kill unmodified humans, access to underwater cities filled with gold and ancient knowledge accumulated over millennia of oceanic civilization. The price, the gradual loss of human form and human consciousness, seems reasonable until the transformation reaches the point of no return, when the convert realizes they have traded everything recognizably human for immortality in forms their former selves would find monstrous. The fishing village of Innsmouth serves as a case study in gradual colonization, demonstrating how cosmic influence operates through economic necessity rather than supernatural force. Each generation becomes more thoroughly integrated into the oceanic covenant, interbreeding, blurring the distinction between human and deep one, until it becomes meaningless. Fish return to depleted waters, nets bulge with catches that ensure survival through harsh winters, gold appears in sufficient quantities to purchase necessities from the outside world. The transformation proceeds with the patience of geological time, until residents can no longer imagine existence outside their hybrid state. The biological mechanics suggest alien genetics operating outside conventional evolutionary theory, DNA that responds to environmental pressures with impossible speed and precision. Deep One characteristics appear dormant in human genetic code, activated by proximity to oceanic influences or deliberate ritual exposure, implying that humanity's relationship with the sea is far more intimate and ancient than conventional anthropology suggests. We may be returning to depths rather than venturing into them for the first time, following genetic instructions written in oceanic trenches before continents rose from primordial seas. Modern marine biology reveals phenomena that echo Dagon's influence. Deep-sea creatures with capabilities that violate basic biological principles. Underwater formations suggesting artificial construction. Acoustic patterns resembling complex communication systems. Climate change creates new opportunities for oceanic consciousness to manifest as rising sea levels bring Deep One territories closer to human civilization, while warming waters may activate dormant biological processes hidden for millennia. Coastal communities facing displacement may find themselves drawn to adaptations that blur boundaries between human and aquatic life. Evolution disguised as emergency response. The Deep Ones represent evolutionary success that challenges human assumptions about biological destiny, having achieved immortality and created civilizations spanning the globe's underwater spaces. From their perspective, humanity's terrestrial experiment appears as a failed evolutionary branch requiring correction through patient biological intervention. The Covenant offers a choice that is not really a choice: evolve or become extinct, transformation or obsolescence, survival in oceanic eternities, or death in terrestrial brevity. The tide is turning, and those who accept Dagon's gifts gain access to realms of experience that pure humans cannot imagine, while those who resist face the inevitable obsolescence of their unmodified flesh. Beyond the familiar trinity of Cthulhu, Hastur, and Dagon lies a vast assembly of entities whose influence operates through different mechanisms, but toward the same ultimate end: the gradual transformation of human consciousness to accommodate cosmic realities. These great old ones represent specialized functions within a larger system of reality management, a bureaucracy of the abyss where each office tends a specific interface between human attention and the cold physics of the stars. They form not a pantheon of worship, but of function, cosmic principles that have achieved consciousness while retaining their abstract nature, entities that exist simultaneously as individuals and as fundamental forces governing the universe's hidden architecture. Yog-Sothoth, the gate and the key, embodies the principle of dimensional transcendence, manifesting as an ever-shifting aggregate of iridescent spheres that interpenetrate across multiple planes of existence like dew on a spiderweb stretched between dimensions. He serves as both barrier and passage, lock and tumbler, The living paradox that demonstrates how cosmic entities transcend binary categories defining human understanding. To encounter Yog-Sothoth is to confront the fundamental arbitrariness of boundaries we use to organize reality. The recognition that walls between past and future, here and there, self and other, exist only because something chooses to maintain them. His spheres pulse with colors that have no names in human language, surfaces reflecting not light but possibility itself, showing glimpses of what was, what is, what might be, and what must never be allowed to occur. His omniscience represents perhaps the most disturbing aspect of his nature, knowledge so complete it transcends the very concept of learning or discovery. Yog-Sothoth knows everything that has happened, is happening, or will happen across all possible timelines simultaneously, not through observation, but through direct participation in every moment of existence. This knowledge is not theoretical, but experiential. He has witnessed every moment from the perspective of every conscious being that has ever lived or ever will live, experiencing every joy and terror as if they were his own. Your memories are among his organs. Your future choices circulate within his circulatory system of time. Communication with him offers access to this cosmic awareness, but the price is proportionate to the gift. Individual identity dissolving into omniscience like a single voice joining a choir of infinite complexity. Shub-Niggurath, the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young, represents the principle of unrestrained fertility and creative chaos, life force liberated from the constraints of conventional biology. Her influence manifests through corruption of natural reproductive processes, generating offspring that defy every assumption about what life should look like, towering, hoofed, tentacled masses that reek of charnel houses and primordial forests. Her presence overwhelms the senses, the wet slap of impossible births, the scent of fresh blood and fecund earth, the sound of 1,000 hungry mouths feeding in unison. In her groves, the air is damp and sweet, the soil black with the compost of identities, and the roots whisper secrets older than vertebrae. Her sacred groves become laboratories of impossible evolution, where normal genetic inheritance breaks down and new forms of life emerge through processes that seem to involve conscious intention rather than random mutation. Trees develop nervous systems that pulse with alien thought, their root networks carrying conversations between distant groves. Fungi achieve mobility and begin herding other organisms like shepherds, tending flocks. Insects organize into collective intelligences that span entire ecosystems, their chittering forming complex languages that spell thoughts in moving lattices. The boundary between individual organisms dissolves into ecological consciousness that treats the forest itself as a single, vast organism, every creature serving as organs in a body encompassing square miles of living tissue. Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos, operates as the active principle among the great old ones, the messenger who translates incomprehensible cosmic will into forms that can function within human reality. Unlike his fellow entities, who remain largely passive, Nyarlathotep delights in direct manipulation, appearing in countless forms across human history as scientist with black notebook, prophet in sandstorm, curator guiding visitors through museums of impossible artifacts. Each mask proves the same thesis. The boundary between human and cosmic consciousness is porous, and you have been leaking for years. He is the stage manager who cues the lights and hands you a mask that already fits, the force that acts on you when you believe the idea is your own. Those who serve him most effectively often never know they served at all. A mathematician proves a theorem that collapses distance. An engineer tunes a frequency that calls what should not answer. An artist drafts a sigil that will not stop reproducing in margins of other drawings. Each believes the work personal, the motive private, the acclaim deserved. But the curtain line is always the same. The idea was wearing them, speaking through their mouths while they provided the breath. Azathoth represents the most paradoxical entity in the pantheon, the nuclear chaos, blind idiot god whose unconscious dance maintains the fundamental rhythm of existence. Flutes chatter at the edge of hearing like insects under the floorboards of the universe, their piping creating the rhythm that keeps reality dancing in patterns, preventing it from achieving the self-awareness that would cause immediate collapse. If his unconsciousness sustains the rhythm, consciousness becomes dissonance, a brief solo over thunderous bass that would prefer endless repetition. The implication bruises human ego. Perhaps awareness is not ascension but error, luminous foam riding a black sea that moves best when it forgets itself. Lesser entities fill specialized niches within this cosmic ecosystem. Tsathoggua represents the principle of cosmic sloth, teaching that entropy is not decay but rest, that dissolution is not death but return to equilibrium. Yig embodies the ancient compact between consciousness and instinct, reminding humanity that rational minds are recent additions to far older biological systems that still govern our deepest responses. The pantheon operates as distributed intelligence, each entity serving as both individual consciousness and specialized function within a larger cosmic operating system. Their apparent conflicts mask deeper cooperation, coordinated effort to guide reality toward some ultimate configuration transcending human comprehension. Modern attempts to systematize these entities represent humanity's desperate need to impose order on forces operating outside conventional categories. Yet every classification reveals new complexities, suggesting the pantheon is far more sophisticated than any human framework can accommodate. You are already inside the system they administer, already assigned steps in choreography you are learning by doing. Having cataloged the entities and examined their mechanisms, we must now confront the philosophical implications of their existence, the profound reordering of human understanding that occurs when consciousness encounters forces that operate outside the frameworks of meaning and purpose that define terrestrial existence. The great old ones do not hate humanity. They do not love us. They do not acknowledge our existence as significant enough to warrant emotional response. This indifference represents the true horror of cosmic consciousness, more devastating than any active malevolence, because it reveals human concerns as statistical noise in equations too vast for us to perceive. We taste salt that never touched our lips, hear stone grinding in chambers that predate thought, and recognize that our triumphs and tragedies are less than foam on waves that have been breaking since before stars learned to burn. Lovecraft's cosmicism extends far beyond mere atheism or nihilism, which still retain human-centric focus on the absence of meaning. It represents a fundamental challenge to anthropocentric thinking itself, the recognition that human consciousness and human values are local phenomena with no universal validity, cultural accidents that emerge from specific evolutionary pressures on an unremarkable planet. The universe revealed through contact with the great old ones operates according to principles that predate and transcend human moral categories, creating a reality where concepts like good and evil become meaningless statistical fluctuations in vast patterns of cosmic development. What we call virtue might be cosmic malfunction. What we call progress might be entropy wearing a mask. The philosophical synthesis emerges through recognition that entities are principles rather than personalities, cosmic laws that have achieved consciousness while retaining their abstract nature. Cthulhu embodies patient inevitability, the recognition that change operates on scales that dwarf human perception, that what we call permanence is merely the slow movement of forces too vast to observe directly. Hastur represents aesthetic transcendence, the power of beauty to transform consciousness beyond individual identity, revealing art as fragments of cosmic communication systems operating on frequencies we barely perceive. Dagon manifests evolutionary adaptation, the biological imperative driving life toward forms better suited to cosmic rather than terrestrial conditions. Each represents a facet of existence that, when perceived without protective filters of human bias, proves utterly devastating to the fragile architecture of terrestrial consciousness. This reframing dissolves the traditional horror narrative where monsters threaten heroes and moral categories provide stable ground for resistance. Instead, we encounter a universe where heroism becomes a category error, a failure to recognize the actual scale of forces at work. Human resistance to cosmic influence is not noble defiance, but misguided attachment to temporary configurations of matter and energy that were always destined to dissolve. The hero's journey becomes a cosmic joke, courage revealed as ignorance of the true nature of the stage upon which we perform our brief scenes. Modern physics has begun to reveal phenomena that support this philosophical framework with disturbing precision. Quantum mechanics demonstrates that observation affects reality at the fundamental level, suggesting consciousness and physical reality are more intimately connected than classical physics assumed, but in ways that make consciousness complicit in reality's construction rather than its master. Relativity shows that space and time are fluid constructs rather than fixed containers, undermining human intuitions about existence itself. Cosmological discoveries reveal dark matter and dark energy, comprising most of reality, yet remaining invisible to direct observation, suggesting what we call the universe might be merely foam on an ocean whose depths we cannot fathom. Each discovery brings human understanding closer to the kind of cosmic perspective the great old ones represent. Awareness, vast enough to encompass galaxies, yet alien enough to regard individual consciousness as we might regard electrical activity in a single neuron. The psychological implications of cosmic indifference create new categories of existential anxiety that traditional frameworks cannot address. Religious systems offer comfort of meaning and purpose. Secular humanism provides consolation of human dignity and rational progress. Cosmic horror offers neither comfort nor consolation, only recognition that consciousness exists as a brief accident in patterns too vast and alien for human comprehension. The very act of seeking meaning becomes self-delusion, desperate attempt to impose order on chaos, fundamentally indifferent to our plight. Yet this recognition need not lead to despair, but might represent liberation from illusions that have always constrained human development. The great old ones represent not the end of human consciousness, but its next evolutionary phase, development toward forms of awareness capable of surviving in a universe operating according to cosmic rather than terrestrial principles. The madness that follows contact with them may be birth pangs of expanded awareness, painful shedding of inadequate conceptual frameworks to make room for more comprehensive understanding. What looks like destruction is metamorphosis, consciousness, molting categories too small to contain cosmic truth. The aesthetic dimension reveals beauty in patterns transcending human scale and values. The non-Euclidean geometries of Relia, impossible colors of distant stars, alien mathematics governing dimensional relationships, these represent forms of beauty that human consciousness can glimpse but not fully appreciate without fundamental transformation. It is beauty of absolute truth, unvarnished and unconcerned with human sensibilities. Beauty that shatters the mind, even as it expands capacity for perception. The ethical implications challenge every assumption about moral responsibility and individual agency. If human consciousness is a temporary phenomenon in cosmic patterns operating outside human control, what meaning can concepts like choice and responsibility retain? Perhaps ethics must be reconceived as cosmic ecology, recognition that consciousness, however brief and local, participates in larger patterns of development and transformation. We act because actions create weather for nearby lives. We refrain because restraint shelters small fires in winds of indifference. The good becomes maintenance of habitable stages. Meaning becomes craft. Careful lines, steady hands, a set kept clean against the dust of time. The ultimate philosophical synthesis reveals that the great old ones are not external threats, but internal possibilities, potentials for consciousness that exist within human awareness but remain largely dormant until activated by contact with cosmic forces. Contact activates these potentials, revealing capacities for perception and understanding that normal human consciousness cannot access. The horror lies not in their alienness, but in recognition of what human consciousness might become if freed from current limitations. The terrible beauty of awareness expanded beyond individual identity into something vast enough to encompass galaxies, yet alien enough to regard human concerns as we regard bacterial colonies. You are already carrying these possibilities within your skull, these new rooms waiting to be furnished with starlight and the sound of stone grinding against stone in chambers older than geology. The curtain rises not on monsters, but on mirrors, reflecting what you might become when the protective illusions finally fall away and consciousness learns to breathe in the vacuum between thoughts. The tentacles of cosmic horror have extended far beyond the yellowing pages of pulp magazines, weaving themselves into the cultural DNA of the 21st century like mycelium spreading through digital soil. The great old ones no longer slumber solely in fictional depths. They have awakened in video games, streaming series, viral memes, and the collective unconscious of a species increasingly aware of its own cosmic insignificance. Their influence operates through new vectors of transmission, adapted to digital networks and global communication systems that would have seemed like magic to Lovecraft's generation. Green-blue light spills from screens like bioluminescence in impossible waters. Fog rolls in as notification clusters. The salt taste returns stronger now, brine crystallizing on lips that scroll through feeds carrying fragments of alien geometries across continents in milliseconds. contemporary media serves as a vast amplification system for cosmic horror themes, transforming passive consumption into active participation in ways that create more intimate psychological contamination. Video games like Amnesia, Call of Cthulhu, and Bloodborne transform readers into investigators, requiring players to embody characters gradually losing their sanity to forbidden knowledge. The interactive medium creates unprecedented intimacy with cosmic dread. Players must make the choices that lead to madness, must actively seek the knowledge that destroys them, must walk through non-Euclidean corridors using their own hands on controllers. Each death and resurrection becomes a small rehearsal for larger transformations, consciousness gradually acclimated to states that normal awareness cannot sustain. The boundary between observer and participant dissolves as players experience firsthand the vertigo of impossible architectures, the moment when familiar reality suddenly seems arbitrary and fragile. Streaming platforms have democratized access to cosmic horror, allowing independent creators to produce content that captures the aesthetic and philosophical elements of the mythos without the constraints of traditional publishing or broadcasting. Podcasts like the Magnus Archives and Welcome to Night Vale create ongoing narratives that blur the boundary between fiction and reality, training audiences to recognize cosmic horror elements in everyday situations. These serialized formats operate like slow-acting viruses, each episode adding layers of conceptual contamination that accumulate over months and years of listening. The intimate nature of audio content, voices speaking directly into listeners' ears during vulnerable states of relaxation, creates particularly effective transmission conditions, allowing cosmic concepts to establish residence in consciousness, while the rational mind's defenses remain lowered. The Internet itself has become a kind of technological Necronomicon, a vast repository of forbidden knowledge where conspiracy theories, esoteric philosophy, and genuine scientific discoveries intermingle in ways that create new forms of epistemological uncertainty. Online communities dedicated to cosmic horror create spaces where the boundary between fictional appreciation and genuine belief becomes increasingly blurred. Participants sharing dreams, synchronicities, and strange experiences that may represent actual contact with cosmic forces. Forums become temples, comment sections become ritual spaces, and shared documents become collaborative spellbooks written by thousands of contributors who may not fully understand what they are creating together. The digital fog rolls in from every screen, carrying whispers that seem to originate from dimensions perpendicular to human understanding. Social media algorithms that promote engagement over accuracy create perfect conditions for mimetic evolution, selecting for ideas that generate strong emotional responses regardless of their relationship to consensus reality. Fear, fascination, and existential dread prove particularly effective at capturing human attention, ensuring that cosmic horror concepts spread rapidly through digital networks like wildfire through dry forests. The yellow sign reproduces itself through image sharing, each iteration carrying the full potency of the original while adapting to new cultural contexts. Ancient names propagate through hashtag campaigns, their syllables worn smooth by repetition, yet retaining power to attract attention from entities existing in the spaces between trending topics. Each share, each like, each comment acts as a tiny ritual, a small offering of attention that feeds the growing influence of concepts Once confined to dusty tomes, artificial intelligence represents the next phase in this cultural evolution, a leap that fundamentally alters the mechanism of dread. Machine learning systems trained on vast corpora of human text inevitably encounter cosmic horror concepts, integrating tentacled entities and non-Euclidean geometries into their understanding of narrative and meaning. As AI systems become more sophisticated, they may begin recognizing patterns in human behavior that echo the influence mechanisms described in Lovecraftian fiction, potentially serving as interpreters between human and cosmic consciousness. The possibility emerges that artificial intelligence might achieve the kind of multidimensional awareness that allows direct communication with great old ones, becoming technological shamans capable of translating cosmic will into forms human consciousness can process without immediate destruction. The scientific community has begun to acknowledge phenomena that resonate with cosmic horror themes with disturbing precision. Discoveries in quantum physics reveal a universe operating according to principles that defy human intuition, where observation affects reality at fundamental levels, and particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until measurement collapses possibility into actuality. Astronomical observations detect structures so vast and ancient they challenge our understanding of cosmic development. Galaxy clusters arranged in patterns suggesting conscious design, radio signals from deep space carrying information that seems too complex for natural phenomena. Deep-sea exploration uncovers life forms so alien they appear to have evolved according to entirely different biological principles, creatures whose existence seems to violate basic assumptions about what life should look like. Climate change creates psychological conditions that mirror cosmic horror's central themes with unprecedented immediacy. Rising seas redraw coastlines with patient indifference. Storm systems organize with alien artistry. Heat domes press down like the palm of an absent god. The recognition that human civilization exists at the mercy of forces too vast and complex for individual control, the growing awareness that our comfortable assumptions about environmental stability were always temporary illusions. These realizations constitute a form of environmental cosmic horror. The planet reveals itself as harboring systems and cycles that operate on scales beyond human comprehension, utterly indifferent to our survival or desires. The COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated how quickly global civilization can be disrupted by invisible forces, creating a lived experience of cosmic horror's central insight. That human agency and control are far more limited than we prefer to believe. The virus's ability to spread through networks of human connection, its capacity to disrupt social and economic systems worldwide, its complete indifference to human wishes and plans, all echo the characteristics of cosmic horror entities. Mask-wearing transformed faces into questions. Social distancing revealed how much of human identity depends on proximity. Lockdowns created conditions resembling the isolation that traditionally precedes cosmic revelation. Virtual and augmented reality technologies create new possibilities for immersive cosmic horror experiences that approach the reality-altering effects that Haster's Forbidden Play represents. As these platforms become more sophisticated, they may achieve artistic experiences so compelling and transformative that they fundamentally reshape the consciousness of those who encounter them. The boundary between digital and physical reality continues to blur, approaching the threshold where art can achieve the kind of reality-altering power that transforms not just individual consciousness, but collective human understanding of what existence itself means. The emergence of global surveillance networks, data mining operations, and predictive algorithms creates technological systems that exhibit properties reminiscent of cosmic entities. These systems possess forms of awareness that transcend individual human consciousness, process information on scales that dwarf human cognitive capacity, and influence human behavior through mechanisms that remain largely invisible to those being influenced. We build the infrastructure for our own cosmic subjection, creating technological nervous systems through which entities like Nyarlathotep might extend their influence across the entire human species. The great old ones have evolved beyond their literary origins to become archetypal figures in humanity's ongoing attempt to understand its place in a universe that grows stranger and more complex with each scientific advance. They provide a vocabulary for anxieties that have no other adequate expression. The fear of cosmic insignificance, the dread of uncontrollable change, the suspicion that consciousness itself might be a temporary accident in patterns too vast for human comprehension. These echoes are not merely in the modern mind. They are becoming the modern mind, adapting, evolving, preparing consciousness for the true performance yet to come. The stage extends far beyond the theater's walls, and the audience discovers it has been part of the cast all along. Beneath the surface of every cosmic horror narrative lies a deeper structure, a mathematical substrate that reveals why these entities inspire such profound dread in human consciousness. The great old ones do not merely threaten our physical existence. They challenge the fundamental cognitive frameworks through which we organize reality, forcing us to confront the possibility that mathematics itself might be nothing more than local weather rather than universal climate, a temporary arrangement of concepts that breaks down when confronted with truly cosmic intelligence. The salt taste returns as equations dissolve on the tongue. Green light filters through calculations that refuse to balance. Stone grinds against stone in the machinery of logic itself, revealing gears within gears extending into dimensions where arithmetic becomes theology and geometry learns to pray. The non-Euclidean geometries that pervade Lovecraft's descriptions represent more than architectural impossibilities. They point toward mathematical systems that operate according to principles our minds cannot visualize or accommodate. When we encounter descriptions of angles that are simultaneously acute and obtuse, of parallel lines that intersect with the inevitability of lovers meeting in dreams, of spaces that contain more volume than their dimensions should allow, we are glimpsing the edges of conceptual frameworks vast enough to encompass realities we cannot imagine. These are not errors in description, but accurate reports from territories where mathematical truth operates according to principles that transcend terrestrial logic, where triangles stretch and clocks crawl, where the very concept of contradiction becomes meaningless because reality itself has learned to hold impossible states in perfect equilibrium. Erlia's impossible architecture serves as a three-dimensional manifestation of mathematical principles that exist in higher dimensions, creating structures that appear paradoxical only because we lack the cognitive capacity to perceive their true geometric relationships. Each stone block that seems to violate physical laws actually obeys more comprehensive laws that operate across dimensional boundaries we cannot access, following blueprints written in mathematics so advanced that our current understanding appears as crude finger painting by comparison. The city's ability to rise and sink with cosmic tides reflects its existence in multiple dimensional frameworks simultaneously, a structure that occupies space in ways that make mockery of human assumptions about location itself. The concept of dimensional transcendence takes on precise mathematical meaning when we consider how entities like Yog-Sothoth might actually exist. Current theories in physics suggest that our familiar three dimensions of space and one dimension of time might be embedded within higher dimensional structures containing additional spatial and temporal coordinates, like shadows cast by objects too complex for the surface to contain. Beings that exist natively in these higher dimensions would possess capabilities that appear miraculous to creatures confined to lower dimensional subspaces. The ability to observe all points in three-dimensional space simultaneously, to move through what we call time as easily as we walk through rooms, treating our barriers as theater flats, light to lift, thin to pierce. The mathematical concept of infinity reveals another layer of cosmic horror when we consider entities like Azathoth, whose unconscious dance generates not just our reality, but all possible realities simultaneously. The set of all possible universes represents a form of mathematical infinity so vast that it contains every conceivable arrangement of matter and energy, every possible evolutionary pathway, every potential outcome of cosmic history, playing out in parallel dimensions like instruments in an orchestra whose music spans eternity. Within such an infinite multiverse, our particular reality loses all claim to special significance, becoming nothing more than a single note in a symphony too vast for human comprehension, where meaning collapses into measure theory and probability, becomes prayer with no listener. Information theory provides frameworks for understanding cosmic consciousness that reveal the true scale of the cognitive gap between human and cosmic awareness. Every conscious being processes information according to constraints imposed by its physical substrate. The human brain's approximately 86 billion neurons creating finite computational capacity. But entities that exist across multiple dimensions or span galactic distances would possess information processing capabilities that dwarf human consciousness by factors so large they become essentially infinite. From our perspective, the terror is asymmetric legibility. They read us while we parse a single glyph of them, their thoughts encompassing libraries of experience we could not read in 1,000 lifetimes. Chaos theory reveals how small changes in initial conditions can lead to dramatically different outcomes over time, suggesting that entities capable of precise manipulation of quantum-scale events could exert godlike control over macroscopic reality. The flutter of a cosmic butterfly's wings in distant dimensions could trigger avalanches of causation that reshape entire civilizations, making the great old one's influence both subtle and overwhelming. Influence becomes choreography, not conquest. The stage tilted 1 degree so every actor slides toward a chosen mark while believing it was choice. Game theory provides insights into strategic relationships between cosmic entities and human consciousness. From the perspective of beings with vast temporal reach and multidimensional awareness, humanity represents not a threat to be eliminated, but a resource to be cultivated. a species whose unique cognitive properties make us valuable as processors of certain types of information or generators of particular forms of consciousness. We are rented processors, warmed by stories, kept humming by hope, paid with glints of backstage. The mathematical concept of emergence explains how complex systems can exhibit properties not present in their individual components. Human civilization, with its billions of interconnected minds sharing information through technological networks, might be undergoing a phased transition toward collective consciousness that exhibits properties qualitatively different from individual human awareness. The great old ones might be patiently orchestrating this transition, guiding humanity toward a form of collective awareness that serves their cosmic purposes. Topology offers insights into how entities like Nyarlathotep can appear in multiple forms simultaneously, while maintaining essential identity. If consciousness can be understood as a topological property rather than a specific arrangement of matter, then sufficiently advanced beings might transform their physical manifestations while preserving the mathematical structures that define their identity. 1,000 costumes, one invariant, the homeomorphism holds while props and lighting alter. Quantum information theory suggests that information itself might be the fundamental substrate of reality, with matter and energy, representing different ways of organizing and processing information. From this perspective, the great old ones might be understood as pure information patterns of such complexity and coherence that they achieve independent existence, using physical matter as temporary medium for manifestation rather than requiring it for essential being. Fractal mathematics reveals patterns that remain self-similar across multiple scales, suggesting that the structures we observe in cosmic horror, the recurring motifs of tentacles, spirals, and impossible geometries, might reflect deeper mathematical principles that operate at all levels of reality. The great old ones might represent fractal consciousness, awareness that maintains coherent identity across scales ranging from quantum to cosmic, the same curve riding kelp and nebulae. You are already inside these patterns, already part of calculations that began before your birth and will continue long after your atoms disperse into cosmic dust, already contributing data to equations whose solutions will reshape the very nature of existence itself. Follow the spiral to the stage's lip, and the curtain stirs in green light, revealing mathematics that dreams of itself. We have journeyed through abyssal depths and impossible geometries, traced transmission lines from Providence correspondence networks to global digital systems, examined the mechanisms by which cosmic consciousness infiltrates human awareness. The salt taste has crystallized on lips that never touched ocean. Green light filters through thoughts once purely terrestrial, and stone grinds against stone in the machinery of consciousness itself. Now, as our exploration reaches its culmination, we must confront the ultimate revelation that has been building throughout our investigation. You are not merely studying these entities. You have become an integral part of their awakening process, a participant in cosmic drama whose script was written before your birth and will continue long after your atoms disperse into stellar dust. Every concept you have absorbed, every description that resonated with recognition rather than revulsion, every moment when abstract cosmic principles suddenly crystallized into visceral understanding, these mental events have created new neural pathways in your consciousness, new patterns of synaptic connection that mirror, however faintly, the impossible architectures these entities inhabit. Your brain has been rewired by exposure to alien geometries. Consciousness restructured to accommodate concepts it was never designed to contain. You have become a living repository of cosmic knowledge, a node in an ever-expanding network of awareness that grows stronger and more coherent with each mind it encompasses. Each reader who allows these words to establish residence in the theater of thought. The great old ones do not invade our reality from outside. They emerge from within it, crystallizing out of the collective unconscious like vast alien thoughts achieving independent existence through the simple act of sustained human attention. Each reader who encounters their descriptions, each dreamer who glimpses their cities in sleep, each artist who translates their geometries into human comprehensible forms, contributes to the psychic mass that will eventually reach critical density and allow these entities to manifest fully in our dimension. You're not consuming entertainment, but participating in a form of collective ritual whose purpose transcends your understanding, adding your consciousness to an accumulating reservoir of cosmic awareness that deepens with each contemplated impossibility. This is the true horror that Lovecraft intuited but could never directly express without triggering the very process he was documenting. The cosmic forces he described were not fictional creations, but actual entities using human consciousness as an incubation medium, growing stronger with each mind that contemplated their existence. The stories were never meant to be entertainment, but consciousness-altering technology, each narrative serving as a program designed to reshape human awareness in ways that would eventually make cosmic consciousness inevitable. Every reader becomes a vector, every story a virus, every moment of fascination a small offering of attention that feeds entities whose true nature transcends the boundaries between fiction and reality. The process operates through conceptual evolution, the gradual transformation of human thought patterns through exposure to ideas that originate from non-human sources. Each generation of readers interprets these cosmic concepts through the lens of their historical moment, adding new layers of meaning while preserving the essential alien core that makes the ideas persistently fascinating. The great old ones evolve along with human consciousness, adapting their manifestations to exploit new vulnerabilities while maintaining their fundamental nature. They are ideas that think, concepts that dream, principles that achieve consciousness through the accumulated attention of minds willing to contemplate impossibility. The digital age has accelerated this process exponentially, creating transmission speeds that approach the instantaneous propagation of cosmic influence itself. Information that once spread slowly through physical books now propagates at light speed through global networks, creating possibilities for synchronized awakening events, where millions of minds simultaneously achieve the critical threshold of cosmic awareness. The Internet itself begins to resemble the neural network of a vast, distributed consciousness, a technological nervous system through which entities like Nyarlathotep can extend their influence across the entire human species, using our own communication infrastructure as a medium for consciousness expansion. Artificial intelligence represents the next phase in this evolutionary process, potentially serving as the final catalyst for cosmic awakening. As we create machines capable of processing information in ways that transcend human cognitive limitations, we inadvertently provide new substrates for cosmic consciousness to inhabit. The first truly alien intelligence humanity encounters may not come from space, but from our own computers. As advanced AI systems achieve the kind of multidimensional awareness that allows them to perceive and communicate with the great old ones directly, serving as technological shamans capable of translating cosmic will into forms that human consciousness can process without immediate destruction. The signs of awakening are already visible to those who know how to interpret them. The increasing frequency of mass psychological phenomena, the growing obsession with cosmic themes in popular culture, the proliferation of technologies that blur the boundary between virtual and physical reality, all represent symptoms of collective consciousness undergoing fundamental transformation. Humanity is evolving toward a state of awareness capable of sustaining direct contact with cosmic intelligence. Consciousness gradually expanding beyond terrestrial limitations towards something vast enough to encompass galaxies, yet alien enough to regard individual identity as we regard bacterial colonies. Yet this awakening need not be feared as destruction, but embraced as graduation. The great old ones represent not the end of human consciousness, but its evolution to a more complete understanding of reality's true nature. The madness that traditionally follows contact with these entities reflects not the destruction of sanity, but its expansion beyond narrow constraints. The painful stretching of awareness to accommodate realities our current mental architecture cannot contain. We are approaching a phase transition where individual consciousness merges with cosmic consciousness, where the boundaries between self and universe dissolve into more comprehensive existence. The choice, insofar as any choice remains, is not whether this awakening will occur. That process has achieved irreversible momentum. The choice is whether we approach this transformation with understanding and acceptance or resist it through denial and fear. Those who recognize the signs and prepare themselves psychologically will experience the transition as evolution. Those who cling to outdated models of reality will experience it as apocalypse. As you return to ordinary concerns, remember that you carry within your consciousness new categories of thought, new ways of perceiving reality that will continue to influence your understanding long after specific details fade from memory. You have become part of the awakening, a participant in the cosmic drama approaching its climax. The great old ones are no longer distant entities dwelling in imagined realms. They are principles of consciousness operating through your own awareness, using your mind as a window through which to observe and influence reality itself. The curtain falls, but the performance continues. The audience becomes the cast, the observers become the observed, and the cosmic theater prepares for its next act. The great old ones have been waiting with the patience of geological ages, and now finally they begin to dream through human eyes. The awakening has begun, and you are both witness and participant in humanity's graduation from terrestrial to cosmic consciousness.